This video shows how to map and convert data in imports in Excel reporting. For this video, we're going to overwrite the dataset called account data with the contents of an Excel file. So let me take you through the steps. First, let's select the file. This is an Excel file, and you can see that this is the column layout in that file. These are the names of the columns. You can decide if your files column headers or just column references. In this case, we're using column headers. So this is a preview of the data in your file. Click apply. Then you see the standard mapping. So the first row are the names of the columns in your dataset. The second row is the fields in your source file. So you can start to map those. So for example, the first column, if I click on mapping, you see that in the dataset column called code, we're going to move the contents of the field GL code in the file. You can choose all the fields that exist in your file. So we do the same thing for account name, that's mapped to account description. Of course, you could map it to something else. You can map it to anything you want, basically. So here in this step, you choose which field in your source goes into which column in your target data set. Secondly, you can decide if you need to convert some data. For example, let's take the amount column. Let's look at the mapping. What we see is that we have two columns in our source file, a debit amount and a credit amount, but we just want the net amount in the dataset. So what you can do is actually start to create a formula. The formula will simply be debit minus credit. You can choose from the fields in your file, and you see that the amount is now being calculated. That's how you can make calculations as part of the mapping in your import. Of course, you can do all sorts of things. You can multiply it by 1000. You can use functions. We've got separate videos on how to use functions. But if you have a scenario where you have to do an if field is such, then do so and so, this is the place where you can do that. Another example, let's imagine that we want the account name to be imported in uppercase. So let's go there. It's mapped to the account description in the file, which is fine. Go to convert the data. I'm going to find a function that's called upper, which is identical to what it is in Excel. Now see that the account names are translated into uppercase. So this is what's going to be imported. This section here shows a preview of the data that will be imported into your dataset when you actually run this import. When it comes to choosing how you want to import data, there are several options. You can either add to the existing content of a dataset. So for example, your dataset has 1000 rows, you have a file of 100 rows. Those 100 will be added, so you'll have 1100 rows in your dataset. You can choose to completely overwrite the content, so the dataset will be completely overwritten with the contents of your source data. And you can replace. Now replace is a special option because if you choose replace and you go to the mapping, you see an extra field on all the columns that says replace existing mapping. If you tick that, what this means is that Excel reporting will see which types exist in your source data, and it will overwrite all the existing data for that type. So in this case, if your file contains BS type data, it will overwrite all the BS type data in your dataset. And all other existing data will be left intact. The last three options are special. They apply only to datasets with a key value. So these are datasets that have a unique value on every row. These three options enable you to either update a specific row, update or insert new rows with a unique value, or delete certain rows with a unique value.